international community's airstrikes. Civilians is paying blood by the two main military forces, but to gain freedom. The person who put the Libyan people in this situation, not the Libyan people, the person who put Libya and the whole Arab world in this situation is Gaddafi himself.
Yes, right, but I mean here, did really, let's read here the other item here so we can manage to take a look on this. The independent and Gaddafi forces on the run as rebels advance. Horrific scenes as government units destroyed by airstrikes. Muammar Gaddafi's troop pulled out of Ajdabiya yesterday after Ajdabiya prolonged airstrikes by Western warplanes destroyed almost all that was left of their armor and artillery on the eastern front, allowing rebel fighters to gain entry to the city. But what about the horrific scenes? And this is what I was asking about.
The horrific scenes here means it's the whole article reflect this term to the Gaddafi troops, which is was a very clear decision by themselves to go and fight their own people or not. It's very known in the military schools that you cannot, it's not easy to stop airstrikes from getting a very powerful effect on your land troops. Egypt, by the way, in 1967 we received that same problem when we been defeated by the Israeli troops. The main problem was we didn't have an air cover to our land troops. But in the situation, which is quite different here, the terrific scenes is made for Gaddafi. I hope.
What about reports that said that about on the first day of the airstrikes, about 38 to 42 people were killed because of the targets of France and the United States airstrikes on areas where civilians were there?
No one can defend that civilians, the blood being chilled in war. I mean, I'm not with killing the civilians, however is the killer, but in the end of the day, the situation is very hard for everyone. The situation is very hard for the Libyan people, for the international community, for the Egyptian people, for the Arab world. And let us be very frankly here, we have an Arab troops supporting the strikes.
We have Arab troops, exactly.
Arab strikes is doing the same thing. Qatar and Emirates is helping.
Which makes me ask you, how do you view the Arab interference along with the NATO?
Very unique and different. That's a very diplomatic answer, I know, but it seems that some Arab nations been more mature than political propaganda, more understanding about the concept of playing a role in the Arab region. And I'm very worried that the Egyptian authorities are not aware of this.
Right. So how do you view?
We never heard about Qatar sending troops anywhere in the world. Actually, I'm very surprised that Qatar even have this much troops.
And the United Arab Emirates sending 12 planes.
Yes, but the situation is very clear here. They wanted to send a very direct message that they want to play a role in the Middle East.
Right.
And
so what about Bahrain? It's very contradicting, you know.
Yes. That's the good story to talk about. It seems very obviously, not only in the international community, it's also by the Arab leaders and maybe the Arab League itself. It seems that there is some kind of political trade between the two different cases. It seems that Arab traded Libya for Bahrain. In the time that a few Egyptian or Arab news agencies doing reporting about the very bad human rights situation in Bahrain and the oppression of the oppositions and the massive violence being used by the Bahrainis forces and also the Al Jazeera forces, which is a coalition of different military forces by different Gulf states. It seems the situation is not clear, and it's need a much more criticism among Arab people and among international community. Only the people who's doing this kind of criticism, the international human rights NGOs.
Right.
It's a very unfair trade, as I say.
Right. From the Times this time, and Libya dead and missing, the coast of reconquest. The smell of decaying bodies hangs over the rows of loosely packed sand as the caretaker moves through the cemetery of Ajdabiya's southern edge. Now, this is the case here, and it's amazing. Now, why is Muammar Gaddafi is really still so holding on to the authority in Libya after all this, and how he thinks he might conquer all the revolution?
It's a big question we have to ask ourselves in the Middle East. Is it part of our culture, or what kind of, really what kind of power this kind of people is having?
No, but
what the mysterious thing about keeping the chair, however people is paying them on blood? That's something I cannot understand. That's something above normal human feelings.
Right, but what really Muammar Gaddafi did has never happened in the whole area. Not in the Egyptian revolution, not in the Tunisian revolution. We haven't seen this extent of blood, but not to that extent.
We saw this extent of massive blood in Darfur.
Yes, definitely.
And in a very obvious case. International community talk about it. United Nations have a very clear evidence about it. The ICC, International Criminal Court, have a very clear case against President Bashir. It's very obvious that some of our leaders don't deserve to be leaders anymore. We cannot even call them leaders. We can call them leaders of gangists or gangs. But I cannot see any kind of politics or any kind of rationale of keeping your position however people will pay.
I still remember the words of the Secretary General of the Arab League, who in the last Foreign Ministers meeting, he said, after the violent action of Mr. Gaddafi or the forces of Gaddafi, the regime lost its legitimacy.
Yes.
Right, so here the Washington Post, in Libya, how Obama can end a mission that started badly. Now, American presidents are better at starting wars than ending them. In Libya, the Obama administration may prove the rule once again in a particularly egregious way. Now,
it's Washington Post very obvious, and this is not the first article, is criticizing President Obama in many different cases. And actually, it's a very legitimate question to be put on the table.
I don't think he ended his mission in Iraq yet, or in Afghanistan, or...
The word mission is not a very clear, very good description to the situation.
Exactly,
this is mean like it's something. It's like a business thing. In politics, it's not like this. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with resources. You're dealing with different.
In Iraq, it was different because it was invasion. Actually,
it was invasion in Iraq, and actually the situation in Iraq didn't start by President Obama, but President Obama promised that he will pull over from Iraq and he will pull over from Afghanistan. It seems he couldn't do the both, because when you are outside of the power, when you are a politician putting a beautiful slogan of hopes, and you want people to follow you and follow your point of views and vote for you, sometimes you're not very realistic. Sometimes when you get the report, you see the numbers and you see the real situation, you cannot do all your election promises.
But yesterday in his radio address, Mr. Obama said that he is giving the administration or the directions or the leadership to the NATO, and that the United States are stepping back So this time, indeed, he is stepping back.
United States stepping back, not he, as a president. It seems that part of Europe, especially France and United Kingdom, wanted to play a more important role in the Mediterranean Sea. A role make sure that this is not a direct occupation, but also this is affect them on life. Let us be very frankly. From Libya to Sicily, in Italy. It's
Lampedusa.
It's very close, and it's not going to be a happy thing for European community to receive millions of refugees from Libya, Egypt,
Italy
Tunisia.
already has asked for the help of the European Unions because of just 15,000 Libyans.
Exactly.
In
So
Lampedusa.
this is politically, this is what politicians call the backyard of Europe. We are the backyard of Europe. So Europe need to intervene in a very specific way, in a smart way too, to play an important role.
How do you view this role? What do you mean by this role? Do you mean here a division? Right, so the United States has invaded Iraq and it's still there. So there is another invasion by other side of. What do you mean exactly by this rule?
Democratic countries, very hard to put division between them. They are able all the time. When we will have in Egypt and a democratic state, it will be very hard to estimate your point of views. When you are a Democrat, you talk and discuss and dialogue with others. You don't go and make things. Usually you ask your people behind your back, and you ask your people in the front of you, which is your allies or your friends. And democratic countries, when they keep themselves democratic, they able to manage to who step forward and who step back. And what can I see here is a very clear cooperation between Europe and United States under the NATO. What I would love to see one day in this Arab region, that this mature democratic states able to discuss and negotiate
with the Arabs,
with the Arabs themselves, and everybody
on equal
fine.
foots.
Everybody would be fine. Who's going to step back and who's going to step forward? I hope so one day.
Negotiations on equal foots.
Of course.
Yes. The Independent and leading article says Libyans deserve better than this coalition of the unwilling. The speed with which the final decisions were taken about military intervention in Libya reflected an admirable sense of urgency. Essentially, there was a race to Benghazi. If the first strike had not taken place when they did, the forces of Muammar Gaddafi would have overrun the city. As the Prime Minister said, opening the Commons debate, the slaughter had already begun. Do you think so?
I'm not quite.
Do you think that the foreign intervention has prevented Gaddafi from moving forward to Benghazi?
I think yes. I think the international